So this video is going to be all about doing custom CSS in WordPress for the final project. So this is an important part of the final project because in a real kind of production website, you're probably not going to start from scratch most of the time. So you're going to be working with some pre-existing platform, whether it's WordPress or Wix or Squarespace or whatever, and trying to add your own kind of twist to that pre-existing code essentially. And that's what I want to show you guys how to do in WordPress for the final project. So I'm here at Code Anywhere. I haven't looked at my website in a while, so my final project is archived. So if I try to run it, I'll get an error that says it's not turned on. And so I need to just click on this over here. And basically what's happening here is we're almost like using a computer that's in the cloud that's on Code Anywhere's servers. And when we don't use it for a while, it kind of shuts down. That's the idea. And so basically we're restoring this container. We're kind of turning the computer back on so that it can run our website. That's the basic idea. Sometimes this can take a while. So I just wanted to go through this process one more time because sometimes when you start up your container and you try to run the project, it's not going to work. And it does take a little while for this to boot up because, again, it's kind of like we're turning on a computer. And as soon as this is done, we'll be able to go into our WordPress site and go into the dashboard, and then we'll be able to edit the CSS there for our site. Okay, so when that's finally done booting up, it can take a minute or two. You should see all of this listed. That indicates it's loaded all the files for your project. And so we should now be able to hit this Run Project button. Okay, so now we can see our actual site. This is what I'm going to be editing and trying to add my own CSS to. Now, how do I get to where I can actually edit the site? Remember, we go up to the address here and add /wp-admin. I mentioned that in the last video, but I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that by adding /wp-admin onto the end, we can get to the login screen for our site. And hopefully you kept up with the username and password for this. Unfortunately, the lost your password button will not work inside Code Anywhere, so you really need to make sure you remember this username and password. So I'm going to log in, or just make it something really easy like admin and password. Okay, so what I can do here is go to Appearance and Customize. Now this, remember, is where we could actually just modify things on the site pretty easily, and this is really usually what you would use to modify your site is the customizer. And so as soon as this loads, it's taking a little while here. As soon as the customizer loads, we'll see a bunch of options where we can change things about our site. And so there's a lot you can do right here. You can change, the color scheme, that sort of thing. And definitely at first, when you're wanting to modify your site, this is the first place you want to look to make those easy changes. But if there's something you feel like you can't do with the customizer options, then the next step is to go down to where it says Additional CSS. And that's what I want you guys to look at for this final project. So for the final project, I'm going to require you guys to target, I think, about 10 different elements on the site. It could be a heading, this little tagline, it could be navigation elements, this text here, anything that on your site that you want to modify. Keep in mind that when you have a different theme, and I would encourage you to try out some different themes other than this default one, when you have a different theme, you're going to have different elements that you can target. So what I'm going to show you right now in this video is just an overview of how these changes work for this specific theme. Okay, so they won't necessarily work just the same way on the theme that you select for your site. So you're going to need to take the general idea that I'm showing you here and apply it to your theme. So how would I start to modify something? Let's say I want to modify this title here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to inspect the element. So this is actually going to be a lot like what we did when we were doing ruining a web page. So you're going to go in and inspect the page, look at the different elements. So we have H1s and A tags and divs and all of this different stuff. And you're going to want to select these things and then modify their CSS. Okay, so for example, I can see this is called site title. It has a class of site title. Let's try to modify that. So I'm going to say period site title, site hyphen title, because it's a class selector, so it's a period. And then I'm going to try something like font size 100 pixels. Okay, maybe not that much. But we can see that that worked. So that's pretty cool. You know, we can just change different elements on the page if we're not happy with how that theme looks by default. This is what it really looks like to work with some pre-existing site builder like WordPress, to add your own customization to it, is to figure out what these elements are called and then add your own CSS. Let's try something else. If I say that the color is green, if I want to change the text color. Okay, so that didn't work. So this is what you're going to run into a lot with this project, and it's going to be the most challenging thing about this project, is getting these rules to work. Sometimes they're easy. I just added this font size, no problem, and it worked. Sometimes you have to do some more work to get this to show up, okay? So there's a couple reasons why this might not be applying. The first is that maybe the color of this text is actually associated with the A tag. And I can actually see here, it says color is white, right? So what I might want to try is to say something like, well, I'm going to say period site title space A, right? That's our descendant selector. So I'm taking the site title class and the A tag inside the site title class, and I'm going to target the color for that specific element. So let's say that the color is green. Okay, it still didn't work, but actually this is pretty cool. I can see where my rule is placed in there. So why is it crossed out like that? Why is the white applying and not the green? Why is the green crossed out? So the reason for that is what's happening here is essentially I'm kind of competing with the pre-existing style sheet that exists for this theme. So I'm writing my own style sheet right here, and it's kind of competing with the one that was already made by the person who made this theme. And so for my rules to apply, I need to make sure that they're considered more specific or more important than what's already there. And there's a quick way to do this. It's a kind of an unusual CSS value, but it's a good one to know for this sort of thing. I can just say exclamation point important. And we can see that now mine applies because it says color green important down here in the corner. Adding that important, and remember to add the exclamation point there, marking this rule or this property value pair is important. Make sure that my rule applies over any other pre-existing rules that the theme might use, okay? So that's kind of the two things that you should check when you're trying to get your rule to apply. First, make sure your selector is selecting the actual element that you want to target. In this case, it was the A tag inside the site title rather than the site title itself. And then finally, you might want to mark it as important to make sure that your rule is applying over anything else, okay? So I'm going to try this on a couple other things just to keep going here. I'll do a quick one right here. I'm going to inspect this text. It says entry content, and then there's a paragraph in it. So let's try that. Let's say period entry content space P. So paragraphs inside entry content. Remember, since we're not in brackets, we don't have that nice autocomplete, so you've got to make sure you put your closing brackets here. Have to type everything instead of using autocomplete. Let's just try something simple. Say the background color is yellow. And that worked. It doesn't look too good, but we can see that it did work. All right, let's try another one. And you can see it applied here because that's also entry content. I hope you'll think a little bit more about how you want to make this look rather than just adding ugly colors to blocks of text. But in this case, at least shows that it works. Even this form here, let's inspect that and see if I can modify it. So what is this called? Input type search. It has a weird ID. It has a class of search field. Let's use that search field class. So I'm going to say period search field, and I'll try background color. Let's see, purple. Okay, that didn't work. Again, there could be different reasons for that. I'm assuming it looks like here that mine's being covered up by something else. So let's just try to mark it as important. Cool, so that did it, okay? So that is the idea. Another really important note about this, you definitely want to select the theme that you're going to use for your site before you add this CSS. The reason for that is if you pick a theme and you do all this work and then you decide later that you want to switch to a different theme, basically you're going to lose all of this. It's probably not going to apply to the new theme, okay? So the first thing you want to do, or not necessarily the first thing, but pretty early on when you're doing this project, is pick a theme that you like, and then build off of that using custom CSS. So again, the idea here is just find the element you want to change, right click and inspect that element to figure out what the elements are called, look for classes and IDs like top menu, class of menu, make the selector here in the additional CSS area and do your property value pairs, okay? Also remember that given that you need to do at least 10 different rules, this is considered one rule, okay? Even if I have multiple parts here, like I say the color is red, if I have multiple lines, this is still just one rule, okay? So you need to have basically 10 different selectors. You're changing 10 different things on the site, and that is the idea. So again, this is going to be probably the most challenging part about this project is modifying the CSS on the page. Otherwise, it should be pretty straightforward, but that's accessed again through appearance, customize, and then additional CSS. Also make sure that when you're done, you save and publish that so that if you leave the page, you don't lose it. And that is pretty much all there is to doing custom CSS on WordPress.